Here, and for this session, we are covering the new news that came out in relation to Activision Blizzard. This one is not a nothing update. I've ignored some of the nothing updates that really haven't actually brought us that much more information, as obviously this is a big story in general and has been milked for a lot of articles. But we have meaningful new stuff today coming out of Wall Street Journal. So we're going to look at the text of that article, and we may not go through all of it in depth, but we will go through it. I'll give reactions, and we'll certainly kick it over to you guys and see what you think about it as well. So, here we have text of the article. Bobby Kotick, longtime chief executive of video game giant Activision Blizzard, received a troubling email in July 2018. A lawyer for a former employee at Sledgehammer Games, an Activision-owned studio, alleged in the email that her client had been raped in 2016 and 2017 by her male supervisor after she had been pressured to consume too much alcohol in the office and at work events. The employee reported the incident to Sledgehammer's Human Resource Department and other supervisors, but nothing happened. According to the email, which threatened a lawsuit against the company, that was according to the email which threatened a lawsuit against the company. Within months of receiving the email, said people familiar with the situation, Activision reached an out-of-court settlement with the woman who also had reported one of the incidents to the police. Mr. Kotick didn't inform the company's board of directors about the alleged rapes or the settlement, said people with knowledge of the board. So that's a problem. This is a problem because this is the sort of thing that the board is going to need to know about for SEC reasons. Like, this is the sort of thing where, this is an issue because he has previously said, oh no, they knew everything. I've told them he didn't necessarily know everything. It's a huge company. He doesn't necessarily know everything that's going on. But this would be the first real piece that suggests that he actually knew what was going on or knew enough of what was going on and hadn't passed that along. So that becomes a problem for him. That becomes a problem when it comes to SEC stuff because, wait, your board has to know this because it potentially affects price, that sort of thing. So this is the first thing that really gets him heavily entangled in this. In the past, he really wasn't. I know a lot of people think he's a scumbag and wanted him to go. A lot of that is attached to, oh, well, he's Activision and they felt he was draining the Blizzard out of Blizzard. So, that needed to be viewed with some skepticism before. It was really just people not liking that their childhood favorite gaming company wasn't the same company anymore, or that, he had sort of greenlit loot boxes, microtransactions into mainstream AAA gaming. His company did that and people don't like that. He gets a lot of hate that wasn't really related to this, that people sort of wanted to pin this on him. This would be the piece that goes, oh, nope, it looks like there's something here. And as this person did say, it is pretty damning stuff that we're looking at here. So this one does sting a little for him. Obviously, it doesn't sting for us reading it. I mean, there's lots of people who would be perfectly fine with Bobby being gone here. As we're going to see, that's not necessarily what's happening, at least in this first salvo of initial follow-ups, because this broke today with the Wall Street Journal. We've already seen that we have a situation where walkouts are happening. That's something. Walkouts are happening. And unlike previous walkouts where they were scheduled, walkouts that are scheduled just aren't that impactful, because if it's a scheduled walkout, you have a situation where people know it's coming. They can sort of get their work done early, or, get the critical stuff done early, move meetings, that sort of thing. The company can plan for it a little bit as well. The employees aren't just missing deadlines necessarily. They can do their own rotating around of stuff and be like, oh, well, I participated in that walkout. Don't I feel good? But it doesn't hurt as much as something that's unplanned, scripted, and just breaks deadlines, misses stuff, that sort of thing. It also doesn't hurt the individual employees as much from okay, now they're swamped, whatever type thing. Their supervisors are as mad at them, that sort of thing. But this one looks like it's happening. I don't actually have good numbers of how many employees have walked out over this, but this one is an on-the-spot one rather than a planned one in reaction to this news coming out. Previously, it was a planned one with days' notice, which is, again, less impactful. If I had numbers, I'd certainly be telling you guys them. If I had numbers that didn't come from the organization organizing it anyways, because that would be interesting. I don't have those right now. But if someone has a good source for those, I'm absolutely interested. Let's continue on here. So continuing on. Activision has been thrown into turmoil in recent months by multiple regulatory investigations into alleged sexual assaults and mistreatment of female employees dating back years. Kotick has told directors and other executives he wasn't aware of many of the allegations of misconduct and has played down others, according to people familiar with the matter in internal documents. It's about right. These documents, which include memos, emails, and regulatory requests and interviews with former employees and other families familiar with the company, however, cast his response in a different light. They show he knew about allegations of employee misconduct in many parts of the company. He didn't inform the board of directors about everything he knew. The interviews and documents show even after regulators began investigating the incident in 2018. Some departing employees who were accused of misconduct were praised on their way out, while their co-workers were asked to remain silent on the matter. Unfortunately, that's pretty common. Even when you get rid of troublesome employees, if you get rid of them through yay, they retired, or yay, they moved on, or you made them uncomfortable enough for them to leave, if you didn't flat out fire them, you're generally not going to want to say bad things. You're just going to be like, oh my goodness, they're gone, thank goodness. Even if you had to encourage them to leave, give them extra money, it is very hard, painful, whatever, regulatorily challenging to terminate people. And generally, it's going to be better when it comes to agreements. You sometimes are going to sign mutual agreements in terms of non-disparagement, things like that. Usually, companies won't sign non-disparagement because it's too hard for them to make sure none of their employees will disparage, but usually leadership isn't going to badmouth someone on the way out if they're just happy to be rid of them type thing on the way out. And I've seen that happen. I mean, I remember things where even like in athletics leagues where like the most troublesome coach in the league finally was out, was gone, whatever, and he had some shady stuff around him in terms of cheating might be a strong word, but late roster requirements, doing all the things where it's like, hey, you're really doing the rules just as you can. You're late registering rosters. You're not registering your players so that when someone plays for another team, it then disqualifies their team, even though their kid transferred out of your school to another school and it should have been legal. You just didn't put the paperwork through, that sort of thing. And he got an award. He got an award and like, oh, you retired and you get this award for being amazing, that sort of thing. Like, this is just unfortunately normal in sort of the world because again, firing people is hard and you want the least blowback you can get around it, so it's pretty normal. It's the same thing where people are generally encouraged not to say bad things about people who have recently died, where it's like, no, let them be gone for a bit, let them be dead. Don't right as they died start saying, well, they did all these terrible things, why are we celebrating this? It's sort of that same type of concept. So this here doesn't mean too much to me and is sort of a weird line if they were praised on their way out. Like, that's not really strong evidence of something. That's unfortunately pretty typical. Okay, he's been subpoenaed in a Securities and Exchange Commission investigation into how the company handled reports of misconduct and disclosed them to the public. Sure. The Wall Street Journal reported in September. Sure. Kotick knew about the alleged incidents and what he told other employees, the board of directors, and investors as part of that probe. Sure. In addition, California Department of Fair Employment and Housing filed a lawsuit in July alleging that the company ignored numerous complaints by female employees of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, citing what is called its frat boy culture. I still think we need a better legal term for this, but okay. Hey, McDonald. Okay. Kotick drafted an email that he had another executive send to employees under her name that dismissed California's allegations as presenting a distorted and untrue picture of our company, according to internal documents reviewed by the Journal. Okay, that's not that weird to have an email come from someone else. And I've seen that in companies. I've seen that in companies where the CEO basically is teaching someone else how to handle a problem. It might not even be like really the CEO's job to handle the problem. It might actually be that other person's job to handle that problem. But of course, the CEO is going to go, hey, you're not really capable of this enough yet. You don't really know what you're doing well enough with this yet. You don't quite have a desire to handle this problem. And the CEO wants to make sure all of their departments work right. So I've seen CEOs do that where a CEO will literally take over for a salesperson and be like, this is the email. And sometimes the salesperson very much appreciates that. And sometimes the salesperson doesn't like that. But I've seen that with sales departments. I've seen that with engineering departments. Like these things happen because the CEO is the person at the top who is going to go do these things, but the email sometimes should be coming from someone else. Again, in those sales examples, you don't necessarily want it to be incredibly obvious that your CEO has gotten that close to the deal and is really watching it, because it makes your company look a little less serious that your CEO is this close to an average deal for you guys, that sort of thing. It makes your company, look perhaps smaller or like the deal is more important than you want to give that appearance of. So that's not incredibly wild for that sort of thing to happen. I get what they're going for here, and they could totally be correct that they wanted this to come from a female employee, and maybe that was a little like, oh, that's dirty that you're doing it like that sort of thing. But I don't know the email. I don't know if this employee, let's see, do we know? He had another executive send to employees. Did he have like the head of HR send it to employees? Was that a she at the time? Because that might make more sense than your CEO sending out that email. But he felt, I need to write this email because it's my company, captain of the ship, that sort of thing. Or it could have just been, hey, for immutable characteristic reasons, let's go do this. And yes, that's a little more manipulative. Val says, I say bad things about recently dead people all the time. I don't get why it's a bad thing. It doesn't really matter if you get why it's a bad thing or not, Val. I would personally agree with you, but there are large portions of culture at large that disagree and say, hey, don't disrespect the dead, don't say bad things about people that have recently passed away, that sort of thing. Like there are large portions of culture that frown upon that. So similar thing. And it's one of those things of, do you want to upset that portion of the culture, or do you want to just let it go and be like, whatever, they're not causing harm anymore. Bad mouthing them isn't really going to accomplish anything unless it's absolutely necessary because we're going to make a terrible decision because XYZ. The board of directors was blindsided by the California lawsuits and allegations, including that an Activision employee killed herself after a photo of her privates allegedly was circulated at a company party. According to people familiar with the board, the directors have questioned Kotick about what he do and why he hadn't been better informed. These people said, he has told them any cultural issues were centered at the company's Blizzard Entertainment unit, which he said had resolved years earlier, these people said. Okay? So should be years earlier, but here we're seeing something that should be years earlier and should be the Blizzard Entertainment department, but here we're seeing 2018. He received an email and it was from Sledgehammer Games. So Sledgehammer Games, I don't think was in their Blizzard unit. I could be wrong, and this was 2018, which isn't that long ago. 2018, that's still relevant history. Okay. In a recent interview, Kotick described himself as transparent with the board and said he provided directors with as much information as they require and is appropriate. And of course, he's going to decide what he thinks is appropriate. I'm very committed to making sure we have the most welcoming, most inclusive workspace in the industry, he said. I am sure you are very committed to making sure that things appear that way. Yes, making sure things appear that way would be good for the PR right now. Magdalena says jokes about dead people are a big part of Polish meme culture, and people get sued for that humor from time to time. Right. Activision spokeswoman Haley Klasky said in a written statement that Mr. Kotick would not have been informed of every report of misconduct at every Activision Blizzard company. That is reasonable, though it sounds like he's exaggerated what he's not aware of. We've definitely established that if this reporting is accurate, he's exaggerated his unawareness. Nor would he be reasonably expected to have been updated on all personnel issues. Right, you do have an HR department. That HR department should be somewhat functional. She said Activision sometimes fell short of ensuring that all of our employees' behaviors were consistent with our values and expectations. Sure, sure. Activision's board, in a statement sent by Ms. Klasky, said it had been informed at all times with respect to the statutes of regulatory matters, and that Mr. Kotick has said the problem was only at Blizzard, one of the company's most successful studios, which we've established it looks like again. We see up here Sledgehammer Games. I don't think that was in their Blizzard portfolio. Santa Monica-based Activision is the second largest publicly traded video game company by market capitalization. It's the largest. It's the largest. The other one is pure speculation, and they're not really a video game company. That's a cop-out. It employs about 10,000 people, and its hit franchises include Call of Duty, Candy Crush, and World of Warcraft. Sure. Under Kotick's leadership, the company market value has risen about 54 billion from 14 billion a decade ago. Yep, and that's good growth, even factoring in inflation. Obviously, we haven't had the type of inflation for most of that time that we have for more recently, but even factoring that in, that's very good growth. Video games as an industry have grown well, and they are the leader, like I said. Okay. Since the California lawsuit, Activision has released more than 500 reports from current and former employees alleging harassment, sexual assault, bullying, pay disparities, and other issues. Okay. Okay, sure. According to people familiar with the matter, the Activision spokeswoman said the company is investigating claims using teams from both inside and outside the company. The example of alleged misconduct by Activision employees cited in this article has been previously reported. Sure. Oh, haven't previously been reported. My mistake. Kotick, 58 years old, is one of the highest paid chief executives of a U.S. publicly traded company, with pay package in 2020 valued at $154 million. In October, after the Journal approached Activision with questions of this article, Kotick told employees he would ask the board to reduce his total annual compensation to $62,500, and that the company was implementing a zero-tolerance harassment policy and ending mandatory arbitration. And that the company was implementing a zero-tolerance harassment policy and ending mandatory arbitration for harassment and discrimination claims. So that would be huge. If they're actually getting rid of mandatory arbitration, somehow I must have missed that. I know that was asked for. I didn't realize that they'd agreed to that. Told employees he would ask the board. Oh, okay. Ask the board and then have the board stomp on it. If this has actually been granted, that's huge. I suspect this was one of those, I'm going to ask you for permission. Now hurry up and say no. You said no? Okay, good. Now I can go tell them, oh, well, I tried, guys, but the board said no. And they don't have access to you as the board, so you get no flack. They've only got access to me as the CEO and in a limited way, and there you go. If they actually got that, I'm surprised. Okay. And for this 62,000, I'm sure what he really was trying to go for is zero, but what you're doing is you're keeping this in such a situation where he needs to, in order to be a full-time employee, and in California, there are certain requirements of, hey, if you're going to be a salaried employee and not a per-hour employee, you do have to make above a certain amount. I thought the amount was lower than that. I thought the amount was a bit lower than that, so I'm surprised it's that and not a lower number. I think that lower number could be in the 40s rather than the low 60s here, but that's probably most of what's tripping this up and causing this to continue to be this. I'm sure he's perfectly fine with getting paid nothing because he's continuing to vest his options and he continues to own a very large portion of the company, and he wants to drive it well so that his stock, which is his real compensation, growing over time is what's doing more. When you get to this level of playing the financial game, your income from your company becomes a smaller and smaller factor of your actual income. The rise in value of your assets becomes more. The vesting of options, if you're fulfilling hey, I have a contract or I have bonuses or something like that, where if I've served this position for 7 years, I get this. If I do it for 12 years, I get this. And each year or each checkmark releases more in terms of your pre-negotiated compensation package that isn't really thought of as your yearly salary. So like when you're starting in your career, yes, this salary or this wage becomes the biggest thing, but as you go through your life, other things should become a bigger portion of where your yearly income is effectively coming from, even if you don't touch this income, which, by the way, you shouldn't. And when you're talking these executive level type things, or working for startups or working for large companies, but in very executive positions, vesting your options becomes very much a thing. Toxic. Yep. Okay. Oh, jokes about. Got it. I see what you did there, McDonald. I read it wrong. My bad. Okay. Okay. In August, Activision named a longtime employee, Jennifer O'Neill, to be Blizzard's co-head, making her the first woman to lead one of the company's business units. Well, to co-lead, they did. The following month, she sent an email to a member of Activision's legal team in which she professed a lack of faith in Activision's leadership to turn their culture around, saying it was clear the company would never prioritize our people the right way. Okay. Email to Activision's legal team. Lack of faith. Activision's leadership. Turn the culture around. Our people here, I believe, being the Blizzard unit that she's co-heading. Okay, so that makes sense, sure. It's a little weird that you'd send it to the legal team. Like, if you're the co-head of Blizzard, why are you sending it to the legal team? You should be able to get meetings with the CEO as the co-head of Blizzard. And the legal team isn't really the place to adjust the culture. That's not really their job. Like, their job is to protect from places, but places that are in charge of adjusting the culture would be you, as one of the co-heads of the unit that you're in charge of, the CEO, who's in charge of the company, and potentially HR. Like, it's a little weird that it's to legal here. Like, that is more of like a legal action. That's weird. Okay. Miss O'Neill said in the email she had been sexually harassed earlier in her career at Activision and that she was paid less than her male counterpart at the helm of Blizzard. How? How did they mess that up? That is laughable. So, here's the thing. If you wanted the other guy to lead the division, have the other guy lead the division and have him actually be the leader of the division. Full stop. If you wanted her to lead the division, have her lead the division and have her fully lead the division, full stop. If you wanted to do this stupid co-leader thing, so be it, but you cannot make the mistake when you're clearly doing a sort of, this is obvious what's happening here. If clearly they wanted the guy to lead it, but they wanted her to sort of be a token for them, and if you're going to do that move, it's stupid. It's stupid to do that move. Either have him lead it or have her lead it, whichever one you think can do the better job. Don't put her there as a token, and if you do put her there as a token, you have to pay her as much, or the reality is you can get away with paying her more, but you have to pay her as much as the other guy. You have to. It's not negotiable. Like, how do you make this mistake? Like, even if you're trying to play the politics and PR game and all that, like, how do you then do that and then, like, miss the obvious step here? That is mind-bogglingly foolish. But the real solution was pick whichever of them is better for the job and actually have them be leading the department. I've been tokenized. Yeah, looks like it. Marginalized and discriminated against. Okay. Wrote Miss O'Neill, who is Asian American and gay. Okay. She described a party at Activision Development Studio she attended with Mr. Kotick around 2007, in which scantily clad women danced on stripper poles at the same party. A DJ encouraged female attendees to drink more so the men would have a better time, according to another person who was present. This would not fly in a company party in 2021. This would not fly in a company party in 2019. This would not fly in a company party in probably 2016. 2007 is a long time ago. I'm not going to say that this was a good thing, but the culture of not Activision Blizzard, but like America, California, where this company was, the culture was a fair bit different in 2007 than 2021 here. So, like, this is going back pretty far. And I'm not saying that this is good, But I think you could find things like this at a lot, and I mean a lot of companies in 2007. So this is a little bit far to reach back for some like, let's get inflamed about this. Again, this in 2019, completely different story. This in 2007, I don't like mean to be the Activision defense squad here. I definitely don't. I'm just intentionally trying to be a little more critical about what we're seeing here because everyone is on the hey, let's, jump on Activision Blizzard. They're terrible. They're terrible. And yes, there's a lot terrible going on here. But as you guys have probably noticed, I'm intentionally playing this a little bit contrarian to make sure that we find, well, what here what here is perhaps jumping on the bandwagon rather than real things that, oh my goodness, how could they possibly do this? And she's absolutely correct where if she's getting paid less and she got given this co-head position when she felt she couldn't make changes, she's absolutely correct that she's been tokenized, and that's nonsense and that shouldn't happen. This is a little bit of a reach to me to be like 2007. Again, this is not good, but I'm I'm struggling to summon huge righteous indignation over 15 years ago at this point. You don't think 2007 was ancient time? 2007 wasn't ancient time. I never said 2007 was ancient time. I definitely did not say that. But cultures evolve over time. Cultures do evolve over time, and you don't want to memory hole forget what the world was like. It's really easy to sort of have like when you picture your friends and doing stuff with them, it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, I know what my friend looks like, and when we did this together 10 years ago they looked like this, and you have in your mind an image of what they look like now, and that's not really true. And you can do the same thing with like, well, what was cultural stance, that sort of thing. So I don't know on that one. It's 2007 is definitely not ancient times, but we have seen some level of change in how we view things, how we view courtship, how we view what's acceptable at a party versus a company party versus that sort of thing. Again, this was not good. I do not condone this behavior of what happened here necessarily at this 2007 party, but I think that you would find Activision here is in company of a lot of very big companies, who would have behaved similarly in 2007. Okay. Ms. Clacy and Mr. Kutnick didn't remember attending such a party. The company announced on November 2nd that Miss O'Neill is leaving Blizzard at year's end. Miss O'Neill said in the email statement that she made a decision that was best for her and her family in the interview. Kotick disputed that Activision is unwelcoming to women. He has to, and said the examples of misconduct identified by the journal are exceptions that don't reflect the company overall. You guys have a lot of exceptions at this point then. He said he is spending more time on workplace issues. He would have to at this point. If there are experiences people have in the workplace that make them uncomfortable, which we're much more adept at being able to respond to those. Prove it. Prove it. Mr. Kotick said that he and the board now expect to be kept better informed than in the past about workplace issues. Absolutely, because workplace issues potentially cost you a lot of money now. Because anything recent and each issue that comes to light and each issue that becomes a big thing is going to really hurt you guys in the California lawsuit. Like, really hurt you guys in the California lawsuit. It's going to cost a lot of money. So you would want to, because these are suddenly very big, high-cost moves, so the board cares about them a lot more now. Okay, Kotick has been a technology entrepreneur since he dropped out of the University of Michigan in the 1980s at the urging of, he said, Steve Jobs. Okay. He counted the former casino magnate Steve Wynn as one of his former mentors. Together with a group of inventors, he acquired Activision out of bankruptcy in 1991 for about $400,000. Wow, what a steal. What a steal by today's standards in terms of what's happened to it. Okay. He forged his reputation by acquiring successful development studios behind popular gaming franchises and then destroying them and making us all sad. I mean, Mr. Kotick long allowed these studios to operate as independently as possible, which he believed would foster the development of hit games. Yeah, I mean, keeping them as independent as possible has mostly worked, but ultimately they get brought more and more into the fold. I mean, Activision and EA are both despised for that, really, where you have things like EA stuck the BioWare logo on games that BioWare didn't work on for ages, and Activision causes things like loot boxes to work their way into things like Overwatch, and causes things like Diablo Immortal to be produced. At least that's what people believe, with good reason. Former employees at several studios said behaviors such as workplace drinking, comments about women's appearance, the sharing of explicit content, and staff organized trips to strip clubs were common. Okay, well, staff organized trips to strip clubs being common shouldn't definitely be the case. Really, none of that should be the case. Yeah, workplace drinking, no, you're working. Comments about women's appearance, not really a thing that should be happening in the modern age. Sharing of explicit content, yeah, oh yeah, we've seen some of that, or we've heard reports about some of that, and that was very explicit content. Definitely shouldn't be happening. So yeah, this looks bad, definitely. They didn't feel comfortable complaining to human resources. Never complain to human resources. If something illegal has happened, you talk to your lawyer and then potentially the police. Human resources is there for the company. Human resources is there to protect the company. That's what it's there for. If something happened, your attorney, and then depending on what your attorney says, the police. And if you go, oh, but I don't want to bother my attorney, it's something minor, blah, 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 well, and my attorney is going to cost me. Well, yeah, your attorney is going to cost you because there's real repercussions to these things, like lost jobs, like major lawsuits, like all of these things. So that's, like too bad. It costs money to get advice from attorneys, but it is frequently worth it to, figure out how to navigate these situations. So remember, HR is not there for employees. It is there for the company, not your friend. The Activision spokesman said Human Resources began reporting directly to the corporate office in 2019, and the prior setup occasionally allowed some employees to conduct themselves in truly regrettable ways. Oh, okay, so 2019 is when they claimed this big fix happened, and this one that's really the new bombshell here it happened in 2016 and 17. Okay, so maybe that'll make some level of no, we've fixed it, it's not a thing anymore, but probably not. Kotick approves high-profile hiring decisions in the exits and pay package of star developers, and he is typically aware of any major problems in each of Activision's 12 development studios and 3 major business units, according to people familiar with his leadership. Sure. Ms. Klasky, the spokeswoman again, said that although Kotick might express his opinion on employment matters brought to his attention, he generally isn't involved in the hiring, compensation, or termination decisions for most employees. I mean, for most employees, sure, the company is too big, but the question is the star employees, the ones who are making you lots of money, but also might be behaving badly. Like, that's such a dodge of a statement. Dan Bunting, co-head of Activision's Treyarch studio, was accused by a female employee of sexually harassing her in 2017 after a night of drinking, according to people familiar with the incident. Activision's Human Resource Department and other supervisors launched an internal investigation in 2019 and recommended that he be fired, but Kotick intervened to keep him, these people said. Who did the investigation? Human Resource Department and other supervisors launched an investigation. Yeah, and it got overruled. Not great. Okay, Mr. Bunting, who led Shrek through the production of several successful Call of Duty games, was given counseling and allowed to remain at the company, these people said. Okay, yeah, and that would be an example of, oh, they're a star, they're making lots of money, we don't want to get rid of them. And unfortunately, that seems to be the culture that they're going to continue to see here, because as we can see here, and I will now jump over to this, in response to an explosive story reporting that Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick knew about various sexual misconduct and harassment allegations, and he was himself a perpetrator, an employee walkout today demanding Kotick's resignation. The board says it's standing by him, and this is reported by Jason Schreier, who does do investigative reporting in video game journalism. Okay, so Santa Monica, California, Business Wire, the Activision Blizzard Board of Directors released the following statement responding to recent media stories. The Activision Blizzard board remains committed to the goal of making Activision Blizzard the most welcoming and inclusive game company in the industry. Under Bobby Kotick's leadership, the company is already implementing industry-leading changes, including a zero-tolerance harassment policy, a dedication to achieving significant increases in the percentage of women and non-binary people in our workforce, and significant internal and external investment to accelerate opportunities for diverse talent. The board remains confident that Bobby Kotick appropriately addressed workplace issues brought to his attention. The goals we have set forth are both critical and ambitious. The board remains confident in Bobby Kotick's leadership, commitment, and ability to achieve these goals. So their day zero response, their day one response to all this hit the fan, and the Wall Street Journal article looks like it's got a pretty clean hit on Bobby here, is they're standing by Bobby. That could just be hey, this is the day one response because they're caught unawares, and their response will change over the coming week or so. It's entirely possible that we'd see something along those lines. It's also possible that Bobby's ownership percentage is just too big and they really don't have a way to deal with it and they're trying to figure it out. But again, there is potentially trouble both with the California suit and now with the SEC suit with a lot of what was released today. So I'm not convinced that that's ironclad and is going to stick. Okay, continued in reply, but that makes a transition to catch up on chat here. Hey, Scott-Free. Val says, at work, a male employee groped me. Ouch. I went straight to the police. The surveillance footage got corrupted due to a computer error by chance. Was it really by chance? Do you believe that? I got punished for not going to HR first with unpaid leave. Sure. But again, that's right, but you should go to your lawyer first. Like, your lawyer first is the move, because if you go to your lawyer first, your lawyer is potentially going to know the playbook. It's his or her job to know the playbook in terms of, hey, we're immediately going to hit you with this. We're immediately going to potentially hit you with a letter, which puts you in a situation where if you now destroy evidence, we have other things that we can go after you for, where it becomes a lot more suspicious that computer glitch error type thing happened, etc. Yes, that's very much what's going on. And I'm not surprised that they did that, but if you'd gone to your lawyer first, again, your attorney is probably going to hit them with a threat of, hey, this is retaliation. This is retaliation right here, and we're potentially willing to sue you over it, etc. Or even just the fact that you're lawyered up and it's clear that you're lawyered up will tend to make them play differently with you, because it means, oh, you know how to play this game a little bit better. Does it mean that you're still going to be able to work there forever? No, it does not. Ultimately, it could be hey, bad things happened and you need to go find somewhere else to work because they don't trust you, that sort of thing. But do you trust them, or do you want to trust them if they're retaliating or punishing you for having gone, hey, this is something bad that happened, and you went to what is the appropriate authorities in the police to have it dealt with, rather than going internally to the company? Like, do you really still want to be working there? So so you potentially putting yourself in a situation where they're not going to have a good relationship with you anymore isn't really the worst thing in the world in my mind. Ultimately, everyone has to make their own decisions, and I am not giving legal advice. I am recommending that if something illegal happens to people, or that people see something illegal happening when they are at the workplace and things related to their job, I think the best advice is go talk to your lawyer, and then with your lawyer figure out, do you talk to the police? Do you talk to HR? Do you talk to some other investigative body? Do you talk to labor monitoring type thing, that sort of thing? Like, that would be my recommendation. But ultimately, I am not your lawyer. I am not your lawyer. I am not your lawyer. Do not take legal advice from me. Male employee got paid. Yep. Then you got punished again when case was dropped due to lack of evidence. Company said I was making stuff up. Stuff like this happens more often than the news says. Absolutely. It absolutely happens more often than the news says. I fully agree with you. Okay. Continuing on with part 2 here. Mr. Bunting didn't respond to requests for comment. The Activision spokeswoman said an outside investigation was conducted in 2020 after considering potential actions in light of that investigation. The company elected not to terminate Mr. Bunting, but instead to oppose other disciplinary measures. Again, this was the Call of Duty executive who made them lots of money. They said Mr. Bunting left the company after the Journal asked about the incident. Okay. Although Mr. Kotick didn't inform the board about the email accusing the Sledgehammer game supervisor of rape, Activision did take action. The accused lawyers, Harmit Dillon, identified the supervisor as Javier Penamelo and said he also had sexually harassed a second woman at the studio. Okay. The employee who accused him of the assaults reported the second incident in 2017 to the police. No charges were brought. Okay. Activision spokeswoman said the company immediately investigated the two assault reports after the executives received the 2018 email and fired Mr. Penemo 2 months later. She said that following the two incidents, the employee said she was too intoxicated to remember what happened, and that Mr. Pinilla's recollection of the second encounter conflicted with the employee's report to the police. I mean, we would expect the accused. That doesn't mean anything. Like, of course, what's reported to the police is going to differ from what the accused is saying. Like, that's pretty normal. What gets into trouble is when one party says something on the record to the police, whatever, and then says something, and it's the same party that says something that's different. That's when you start to get into, wait, there might be inconsistencies here. And some of that can definitely be stress-induced, but that is generally the test that is used for, okay, what's going on here? We expect differences between these two, so this doesn't really mean anything. Okay. She said the female employee hadn't reported either incident to the company before she left in November 2017. I mean, she reported them to the police. She doesn't have to. Guess what? The police are going to make the company aware of it. Again, her lawyer, if she'd gone to her lawyer first, might have also chosen in some way to notify the company, because there are good legal moves that you can do there, but oh well. Mr. Dillon's email, however, said the employee had told Sledgehammer Human Resources about both incidents. A colleague of the former employee said the same. Mr. Penemo didn't respond to requests for comment. A spokesman of his subsequent employer, online game developer Zynga Inc., said it launched an internal investigation after questions from the Journal, and Mr. Penemo subsequently resigned. Okay, so that is a sign. I mean, it's not necessarily a, was for sure guilty type thing. It could be well, he's not going to work under the conditions. I mean, it sucks to have one's life put under a microscope. But yeah, it's certainly not a good sign. It doesn't look good that he then resigned when he got investigated at a second company there. It's not proof of guilt, but it's definitely something that people would consider when making their own decisions of what happened. Okay. The email that the accuser's lawyer sent Mr. Kotick also said another Sledgehammer employee, Edark Rochik, had been accused of sexual harassment. A female employee, Ashley Marks, said in an interview that she complained to supervisors and human resources in 2017 about harassment by Mr. Rorich, including at a company party, which there was heavy drinking. Okay, why do you guys have so much heavy drinking at your company parties? Like, get this right. I mean, clearly this is part of the issue. Like, they have a culture where it seems sexual harassment is okay. They have a culture of company parties allow for heavy drinking. Like, again, you guys live your lives how you want to, but like, company parties aren't fun. Like, you shouldn't really even go to company parties. Company parties are a formality of like, oh yeah, whatever, but you can't actually let guard down because you're still with a bunch of your company associates who you have to see the next day, continue to work with. Like, you do not heavy drink at company parties. You don't really let down your guard, company personality, whatever the case may be, when going to company parties. You can go to them as a formality, but no one should be viewing them as a place to actually cut loose at this point in how things work, what happens. Like, this is just like, they should know better than this, both at the executive level for allowing this to happen, but also the employees should know better than to be cutting loose at company parties like this. Like, the employees should be raising eyebrows going, why are people drinking so much alcohol? Why are people still potentially going to strip clubs, things like that? Like, that's just my advice to people generally would be, do not cut loose at company parties. Company parties shouldn't really even be thought of as parties. They should be thought of as after hours networking events, and they should be, oh, if you're networking, you still need to be fully cognizant. You still need to have like 95% plus of your mental faculties available to you. Right. Zergling Dance has it. Company parties are still professional events and more for networking with people outside of your team. Exactly. That's exactly what they're for. Let me catch up here. My employee got paid, then you got punished. Then when the case was dropped due to lack of evidence, company said you were making stuff up. Stuff like this happens more often than the news says. Absolutely. Everything happens more often than the news says. But you are absolutely right. Stuff like this happens more often than the news says. And those are really hard things to do with. Anything in the sexual world is really hard to deal with. I've obviously studied this. I have my, I've studied criminology, criminal justice, that sort of thing. I've worked with police departments, that sort of thing. I've worked with public defenders and such as well. And yes, I'm very familiar with those are always very hard to deal with for evidence reasons. I mean, all those things those frequently end up with very few witnesses with very different stories, frequently alcohol is involved, though not always. And then you've got so very few witnesses, alcohol was involved, evidence very easy to destroy. It's a highly stressful situation, which causes people's stories to change. There's a desire to shower immediately after the incident, to feel clean, to do that. But that, of course, destroys certain test procedures. Like, these are very hard cases to deal with when we get to the further beyond groping side of it. But even the groping side of it, it gets into this is all very tricky type cases to deal with. But all of it absolutely happens more often than reported. Like, everything happens more often than recorded. Things don't always make the news, unfortunately. Crazy how much of alcoholic culture exists at Active Blizz. Yeah, agreed. That shouldn't be the case. Temporal, are you a lawyer in general? I think I answered that question. I've worked with public defenders. I've worked with police departments. I've studied criminology and criminal justice. But no, I am not. I am not a practicing lawyer. Okay. Where were we? Mr. Roach confirmed he was investigated for a harassment incident at an office party in 2017, and it was unclear what exactly did and did not happen since a lot of alcohol was involved. He added that it was stupid of me and totally uncalled for to get that drunk. He said he was given a 2-week paid leave and allowed to remain at Activision Blizzard or at Activision in a different position. 2-week paid leave. Ugh. And we thought you could only get that on government jobs when it comes to it. No, turns out you can get that when you're making your company a lot of money too. Okay. And a human resources letter to him in 2017, which was shared by Mr. Roach, Activision asked that he keep this matter confidential. Mr. Roach, a German citizen, said he was let go in 2018 after he had an argument with his manager about his green card. The Activision spokeswoman confirmed that he was terminated for that reason. An argument with his manager about his green card, and you're going to say he was terminated for that reason? That seems a little legally dicey on his own. Unless you're saying, like, he got super loud and uncivilized or threatened violence or something, that seems like you're probably into immigration law question. Okay, whatever. Different wormhole by itself. Excessive drinking has been associated with numerous complaints of alleged employee misconduct at Activision, according to former employees. Yeah, it sounds like they have a serious drinking culture issue there, like a serious one. Ms. Klasky said the company will soon ban alcohol in the office. Why soon? Like, that could be a tomorrow move. That could literally be a tomorrow move. Like, you guys, is this not a tomorrow move because your fridges and wine coolers have tons of alcohol in them right now? Like, it's really not hard. Some offices might have like a bottle of wine or a few beers in the fridge, but the only time anyone's ever cracking those is when they're working later after hours or when they're left over from company parties, which, again, you should not be drinking heavily at. Pathetic. Mom, 2 more weeks, please. Right? Uh, okay. Uh-huh. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which has been investigating Activision since 2018, said a complaint was made public in September that employees endured sexual harassment that was severe or persuasive to alter the conditions of employment. Activision said it agreed to pay $18 million to settle the EEOC's case. The company said that at the time it would take other steps to prevent and eliminate harassment, and it has. One of the steps it's taken is it's hired a group that these guys absolutely hate to, help enforce and get going their zero tolerance policies and increase diversity and those sorts of things. And these guys hate it because they want one that is a third party reviewer that is employee chosen, which I will disagree with a little bit. It's not really third party if it's employee chosen. Like, your first discussion is a discussion over who it's going to be, and you guys are both going to have to compromise over who it's going to be. If Activision Blizzard goes and just hires someone immediately, which they did, of course it's going to be a put the nails to the employee group. And if the employee group goes, no, you have to pick our one, well, you've won in pre-trial motions. It's not really a pre-trial, but that's the analogy that I'm going to use here of you can win trials and pre-trial motions. And if the company group if the company goes and picks theirs, which they've tried to do, which they've done, but can it get shaken out by a union type group, someone like that, to go, no, 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 it's going to be someone we select instead? The real answer is they're probably going to have to find some sort of compromise, but maybe not. If one side can win hard enough, they don't have to compromise, and no one wants to compromise. Everyone wants their way. You can't imagine working somewhere with alcohol at the office? I mean, I know people who work for wineries, so I guess I can imagine working places with alcohol at the office. That said, and sometimes after company parties, something does get left there, or sometimes when people are staying late because they're still working at 7 p.m. in the office, if they choose to drink a beer at that point, so what? Not like, oh, have 3 drinks, then you're not working, then you're not getting anything done. But if when you're not having to interact with other people because it's 7 p.m., but you're staying late to get a project done, something like that, I've seen companies that really aren't going to frown at that. And that seems reasonable to me, but everyone make their own decisions. The California regulator that sued Activision in July has challenged the settlement, saying the proposed amount is too low and the agreement is harmful to victims and its case. The Activision spokeswoman noted that the EEOC has accused the lawyers leading the California case of misconduct. The state agency has denied those allegations. There's a lot of accusations of misconduct going around the legal world right now. Activision didn't make disclosures to investors about the more than 2-year-long EEOC probe until the lawsuit became public this year. Yikes. The disclosure and disclosed the SEC probe in September after questions from the Journal. A lawyer from Activision said most companies don't disclose EEOC investigations. Okay. Your workplace is zero back, so it's just so alien to me. I don't know what zero back means in this setting. Okay. Uh, okay. Over the years, Mr. Kotnick himself has been accused by several women of mistreatment, both inside and outside the workplace, and in some instances has worked to settle the complaints quickly and quietly, according to people familiar with the incidents and documents reviewed by the Journal. I'm going to need a little bit more of a specific word than mistreatment, because you're mistreating someone if you're lying to them. You're also mistreating someone if you're putting them in the grave. But those are two very different things, and one of those is legal and the other isn't. So, I'm going to need a little bit more specific than mistreatment. Yeah. Are you mistreating someone if you're saying, like, you're doing something that's mistreatment if you're saying, oh yes, I'm looking for a long-term relationship, yeah, married, kids, the whole thing, and then you're actually just looking for a one-night stand. But like, you're also mistreating someone again if you go do something much, much, much more serious than that is criminal. And I need a little bit more than that to know what we're talking about here. I suppose I could go try to find what we're talking about here, but like, I would like them to actually, get a little more serious, provide, okay, the link, etc. Maybe they did provide a link. That might not be fair of me. This is a text-only copy. Blood alcohol content. Yes, duh. Okay. Uh-huh. In 2006, one of his assistants complained that he had harassed her. Oh, we are going to get more. Including by threatening in a voicemail to have her. Oh, yikes. Yikes. To have her time on this planet ended, according to people familiar with the matter. He settled the matter out of court, people said. Probably for a lot of money. You don't. How do you leave a recording? How do you leave a recording? Like, be conscious that you're leaving a recording. Not you're talking to someone on the phone. Not you're sending something through text message, instant messenger, that sort of thing, where it's all being recorded anyways and you're not thinking about it. But how do you leave something that is clearly a recording of threatening to end someone? Like, oh well. Oh well. Like, that alone should have been. And I don't care that this one is 2006 because, like, that is not something that culture has significantly moved forward, changed on, etc. Like, that one is what? But that's part of why people settle things out of court. Not subtle threat. Yeah, yeah. The Activision spokeswoman said Mr. Kotick quickly apologized 16 years ago for the obviously hyperbolic and inappropriate voicemail, and he deeply regrets the exaggeration and tone in his voicemail to this day. I'm sure he does. I'm sure it cost him a lot of money, that exaggeration to his tone in the voicemail to this day. I'm sure that cost him a lot of money. 2007, he was sued by the flight attendant on a private jet he co-owned. The flight attendant claimed the plane's pilot had sexually harassed her, and after she complained to the other owner, Mr. Kotick fired her. Dirty. So she complains to one owner, and they try to have the other owner fire her, so it looks less like retaliation. Yeah. I don't know that that's what happened, but that's certainly what it would look like there. The defendant denied the allegation, of course. In a separate action related to legal fees in the case, an arbitrator citing what he said was sworn testimony, wrote that Mr. Kotick told the flight attendant and her attorneys, "I'm going to destroy you." Okay, sure. I mean, it's the arbitrator saying it, so that carries some weight. Like, the arbitrator is effectively the judge equivalent in that situation. They're not as powerful, but they're the most equivalent thing to that in that setting. So them saying that Mr. Kotick said that in sworn testimony, even though they don't have, like, a recorded record of it, is pretty solid. I'm going to destroy you is certainly less threatening, though, than a threat to end someone's life. We're going to destroy you in this case. We're going to win this case. We're going to own you. That sort of thing. That's less serious by a lot of degrees. Like, there's that sort of there's nothing really illegal about that being said there. A spokesman for Mr. Kotick denied that he said anything. Okay. What does Temporal think their motivation for their actions? Whose actions? Whose actions? Are you asking me about Bobby? I don't think Bobby is a good guy, if that's what you're saying. I'm not like, oh, Bobby's great. I'm intentionally trying to be a little more controversial about this, a little bit more, hey, I know everyone's going to take the pile and look how terrible everything is, and I'm finding places where a little bit of, different view can be given there, because I think it makes it more interesting, like a bit more of a, okay, well, this is what businesses do, this is how businesses work type thing. So there is some of that going on, certainly, but are you asking, are we asking about Bobby? Are we asking about people at the parties? Are we asking about the board for Activision Blizzard? Who? the men in the office culture. Like, what's the advantage of them doing it? You have some opinions, but you'll keep them to yourself. Okay, so uh, in terms of people doing that in the office, it's a power thing. Some of that, yeah. Some of that happening in the office is a power thing. In terms of what's going on here, I mean, people are being stupid. It could be people trying to unwind from way too harsh of a workload, but really this is people being foolish, and people should not be drinking like this in the office, is where a lot of this comes down to. In terms of some of this stuff where it's on the plane, things like this, these are very powerful people. They can co-own private planes, for example, and they sort of expect the world to serve them. I can't say that about these people specifically, but that becomes a common trait when you get to this level of power. Money is almost directly power in the world currently. It hasn't always been quite to the case that it is now. And, it becomes a bit of a, hey, we're into ruling versus serf class type thing. Why is this serf snapping back? Why are they saying anything? Why aren't they just giving into their whims, etc.? And I don't really agree with the comment of that being the patriarchy there. That just has to do, in my mind, a lot more with power versus not power. It's much more of a class thing, and you get into the super wealthy rich versus the everyone else that is either struggling to get by or is middle class, but in their middle class can see one tier down is basically destitute and goes, wait, I have to do whatever it takes to avoid being there because it's so much worse. The middle class is not very middle at this point. People get too cozy in work environments. Yeah, that's clearly happened here. Clearly, it's happened with some of the people who were powerful, who made a lot of money, who thought they were invincible. The truth is, no one is invincible, and they will always be cut out if they make too big of a mistake. Bobby may learn that himself shortly. It's possible that by not disclosing some of this stuff, it's going to be enough SEC trouble that the company isn't going to want him at the helm anymore. His ownership share may be too big for that to really be possible, but it's entirely possible that we'll find a situation like that, like we, would potentially find situations with the Call of Duty executive that we were talking about earlier. But yeah, that's sort of where we are here. Okay. Mm-hmm. In 2008, they settled by paying the attendant $200,000, according to the arbitrator's decision. A spokesperson for Mr. Kotick said he couldn't have fired her in retaliation for complaining because she never complained directly to him. I mean, that was the trick, right? Now, did you guys manage to have communication between the two owners without any record of it, which is certainly possible, or without any record of it that was able to be subpoenaed, or it's possible that he fired her for some other reason. It's possible that she got super upset over what had happened and was having, was super upset and complained to the other owner, and then in how she was acting around Bobby was completely unacceptable for her position. She started being rude, whatever, and Bobby fired her over that. That's possible. I don't think that's likely what happened here, but that it is possible to have that sort of situation. Again, it was much more likely, hey, I'm going to quietly tell you this in a way that's not recorded and you fire her type thing. But there is the possibility of that, and that's why, we would have to know more. I don't know what happened in arbitration. Mhm. In 2020, about 30 employees who worked in Activision's esports division wrote an email to their unit's leader saying that female employees had been subject to unwanted touching, demeaning comments, exclusion from important meetings, and unsolicited comments on their appearance. Mr. Kotick was aware of the email, according to people familiar with the matter. Sure. Activision spokeswoman said after the meeting with representatives of the group, the company took steps such as providing diversity and inclusion training to the esports leadership team. Yeah, more diversity and inclusion training. That's probably not the solution. Guys, just be decent human beings. It'll yeah, oh well. Be decent human beings. Understand that when you're at work, you're on the clock. It's not your time. Your time for fun is when you're not at work. It's keep your lives separate. The work is not a good place to workplace is not a great place to have fun. The workplace is not a great place to do dating. The workplace is not a great place to flirt. Like, you're there on someone else's dime. Act like you're on someone else's dime. Whatever. Okay. Former Blizzard technology chief Ben Kilgore faced multiple allegations of sexually harassing female staffers over the course of several years, according to people familiar with the matter. During a company investigation, Mr. Kilgore lied about whether he had a relationship with a lower level employee, some of these people said. He was fired in 2018 in a move approved by. Oh, I've got to go, guys. I didn't realize I was so late. Sorry, I went super long on this one. I'm going to have to call it here. Time just got away from me. It was a long article. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do drop a like. If you're looking to get coaching yourself, we do Overwatch coaching on this channel. You can join my Discord in the description below. I will see you guys in a minute. Okay, that's going to do it. Thanks, guys. Temporal.